When we think of courtroom drama, we often imagine big cases with experienced criminals or complex legal issues. We rarely think that children and teenagers might be involved in such situations. However, there have been many surprising instances where young people have shown strange and uncontrollable behavior in court. Here, we look at 7 unforgettable cases where kids acted wildly during their trials, showing that intense and unpredictable behavior can happen at any age.
Why did you make the suggestion to Jamie to go inside the school today?
I was planning to murder him.
Michael Hernandez's heinous act sent shockwaves through the community of Miami, Florida in 2004. At just 14 years old, he committed a crime that would haunt the Southwood Middle School and the families involved forever. His victim, Jamie Go, was a friend, making the betrayal all the more chilling. The brutality of the murder, coupled with Hernandez's lack of remorse, painted a disturbing picture of a young mind gone terribly astray. The trial that followed revealed disturbing details about Hernandez's psyche. He displayed a chilling calmness throughout proceedings, in stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of the victims' families. This lack of empathy only added to the horror of the crime. As evidence emerged, it became clear that Hernandez had meticulously planned the murder. His diary, filled with detailed plans and dark fantasies, offered a glimpse into the depths of his disturbed mind. One particularly disturbing aspect of Hernandez's obsession was his fascination with serial killers. He idolized characters like Buffalo Bill from the movie The Silence of the Lambs, drawing inspiration from their twisted legacies. In his diary, he documented his thoughts on killing and pondered the number of lives he would take. This macabre fascination with violence and death set him on a path towards infamy. During the trial, psychologists testified about Hernandez's mental state, painting a portrait of a deeply troubled young man. Despite his age, he exhibited traits commonly associated with psychopathy, including a lack of empathy and remorse. His cold demeanor in court sent shivers down the spines of those in attendance, leaving many struggling to comprehend the depths of his depravity.
So Michael picks his 3 victims.
He had a hit list in his journal in which my name was the first, and then there was his sister and Jamie. He wanted to kill the 3 of us because we were close to him and we trusted him.
Ultimately, the jury delivered a swift verdict, finding Hernandez guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a fitting punishment for a crime so senseless and cruel. In court, his behavior was described as cold and planned, which caused shock and disbelief among many people. On November 18, 2008, Hernandez was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Even years after his sentencing, Michael still shows no remorse.
Oh my God. God, man, I may have to stab myself.
Oh my God.
I try to bring a sharp object to the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something in your hand, Mr. Hernandez? No. Stab. Oh, see, I can cry.
This case remains one of the most harrowing examples of juvenile crime.
Why did you dig that hole?
Because I was bored.
Tell me about that hole, though. It's a very specific hole. I mean, it's a very unique hole, I should say.
Alyssa Bustamante was only 15 years old when she lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods and killed her by stabbing her many times. She did this because she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. Alyssa Bustamante's case is a chilling example of a disturbing trend in society: juvenile offenders committing heinous crimes. Born on January 28, 1994, in Cole County, Missouri, Bustamante's life took a dark turn when she perpetrated one of the most shocking crimes in recent memory. The events unfolded on October 21, 2009, in the rural town of St. Martins, Missouri. Bustamante, then just 15 years old, lured her unsuspecting 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the nearby woods under the guise of playing together. Once secluded among the trees, Bustamante mercilessly attacked Elizabeth, brutally stabbing her multiple times until the young girl lay lifeless on the forest floor. The motive? shockingly simple yet profoundly disturbing. Bustamante wanted to experience the sensation of taking someone's life. The aftermath of this gruesome crime shook the small community to its core and sent shockwaves across the nation. The question on everyone's mind was, how could a teenager be capable of such unspeakable brutality? The answers, as investigations unfolded, revealed a troubled and turbulent past that hinted at a troubled psyche.
Expletive killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. It was amazing. It's pretty enjoyable. I gotta go to church now, LOL.
Bustamante's journey through the legal system began on November 17, 2009, when she first appeared in court to face charges related to Elizabeth's murder. Initially, she pleaded not guilty to the accusations leveled against her. The prosecution wasted no time in presenting a case against her, charging her with first-degree murder and armed criminal action, crimes that carried severe penalties under Missouri law. As the case progressed, Bustamante's defense team navigated a complex legal landscape, grappling with the delicate balance between justice and the age of their client. Given Bustamante's status as a minor at the time of the crime, her defense sought to mitigate her culpability, arguing that her actions were influenced by a combination of mental health issues and a traumatic upbringing. After years of legal proceedings and intense scrutiny, Bustamante's case reached a critical juncture in January 2012. Faced with mounting evidence and the prospect of a lengthy trial, Bustamante made a pivotal decision. She entered into a plea agreement with the prosecution. In a dramatic courtroom moment, she changed her plea from not guilty to guilty, admitting to the lesser charges of second-degree murder and armed criminal action. Despite her admission of guilt, Bustamante's path to redemption was far from assured. In a courtroom filled with tension and emotion, she addressed Elizabeth Olten's grieving family, expressing remorse for her actions and seeking forgiveness. However, her words fell short of convincing the presiding judge, who remained steadfast in delivering a sentence befitting the gravity of the crime. In a verdict that sent shockwaves through the community, the judge handed down a sentence that would ensure Bustamante would spend the rest of her days behind bars. She was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 35 years, a decision intended to serve as both punishment and deterrent against future acts of violence.
You thought Bustamante's crimes were reprehensible. Brace yourself for her shocking conduct during the proceedings. The police found Olten's body 2 days later after Bustamante confessed to the murder. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding a trial and a possible life sentence without parole. At her sentencing hearing, Bustamante apologized to Olsen's family and said she regretted her actions. However, the judge was not moved by her remorse.
But the exact cause.
In May 2017, 18-year-old Brooke Skylar Richardson secretly gave birth to a baby girl at her parents' home in Carlisle, Ohio. The baby was found dead and buried in the backyard 2 months later. Richardson was charged with aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment. She said she was innocent and did not burn her child.
Burn her? I promise on anything I didn't burn her.
Are you sure?
I swear.
Did you burn anything around her? Did you try to maybe melt the dirt or anything?
No, and I did nothing with fire. Nothing.
Richardson's trial in 2019 attracted a lot of attention, not just because of the crime, but also because of how she acted in court. During the trial, Richardson was often crying and seemed very stressed and anxious. Her defense said she was a scared, immature teenager who panicked, while the prosecution said she was trying to keep her perfect image. The jury acquitted Richardson of the most serious charges, finding her guilty only of abuse of a corpse. Her emotional behavior during the trial showed the intense psychological pressure she was under.
Brooke Skylar Richardson, not guilty of the offense of involuntary manslaughter. Count 3, child endangerment. We, the jury, find the defendant, Brooke Skylar Richardson, not guilty of child endangerment. It does say we further find the defendant did not cause serious physical harm to the alleged victim, but that finding is not necessary as a matter of law. Verdict form number 4, we, the jury, in the above captioned case, find the defendant, Brooke Skylar Richardson, guilty of the offense of abuse of a corpse. Ladies and gentlemen, are those the verdicts of the jury?
Yes, sir.
You may be seated. All right, again, you are now discharged from all your service. Does either side wish to have the jury polled?
I'm glad I get to see your face right now. Of you killing my daughter for the very first time.
The sad events that went down on February 14, 2018 really got people talking about guns and keeping schools safe. This guy, Nicholas Cruz, who was only 19 back then, did one of the worst school shootings ever at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. It wasn't just about that school though. What he did sparked a lot of arguments, people getting active, and legal stuff that's still going on. When they had the trial in 2022, everyone was watching, wanting to see justice done after such a terrible act. The numbers really hit hard. 17 people killed and 17 others hurt really bad. The families of those who died, the survivors, and lots of other folks wanted the legal system to hold Cruz responsible and to figure out why he did what he did.
Oh my God!
Throughout the trial, Nicholas Cruz's demeanor oscillated between moments of apparent detachment and unexpected displays of emotion. Observers noted his blank stares, punctuated by occasional apologies, juxtaposed with instances of inexplicable laughter.
What are you going to do with the rifle? And the reply was, I go shooting with my friends on the weekends. I just want my own stuff.
These erratic behaviors added layers of complexity to an already emotionally charged courtroom environment, leaving many to ponder the inner workings of the young man standing trial for such heinous crimes.
Prison jumpsuit, glasses, and a mask. He even laughed at one point during the proceedings. Cruz's lack of emotion and his escape from the death penalty outraged and disappointed many of the victims' relatives who had hoped for a different outcome.
His defense team talked about Cruz's troubled past and mental health problems, asking for a life sentence instead of the death penalty. In the end, Cruz was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Broke into his ex-girlfriend's house with a handgun. He fatally shot his ex-girlfriend in her bedroom while she was listening to music.
On May 9, 2019, Kaylee Jugga, a 16-year-old student from Kenosha, Wisconsin, sadly got shot and killed at her home. The one accused of this awful act was her former boyfriend, Martez Fuller, who was also 16 at the time. This incident got a lot of attention from the media, shedding light on the issues like domestic violence, gun control, and the tragic outcomes of violence affecting young people. Kaylee Jugga was a lively teenager, well-liked for her school activities and friendly nature. Martez Fuller was another student at the same school. They used to be in a relationship that reportedly turned troubled, with Fuller showing controlling and aggressive behavior. Even though they broke up, tensions lingered between them. On the day of the incident, Kaylee was home with her mother, Stephanie Jugga. Reports say Martez Fuller broke into their house using a window, carrying a gun. He shot Kaylee multiple times, causing her immediate death. Stephanie Jugga also got shot but survived and was able to call 911 for help. Law enforcement quickly launched an investigation, identifying Fuller as the primary suspect based on witness testimonies, including that of Stephanie Jugga, and forensic evidence. Fuller was apprehended shortly after the incident. During the investigation, it was revealed that Fuller had displayed signs of possessiveness and had previously threatened Kaylee. Text messages and social media interactions between the two painted a picture of a volatile and increasingly dangerous relationship. Fuller's trial started in 2020. The prosecutor showed strong evidence, like forensic stuff connecting Fuller to the crime scene, statements from Kaylee's friends and family, and digital proof of Fuller's threats and strange actions before the killing. The defense tried to question the evidence's reliability and said Fuller wasn't there when the crime happened. But the prosecution's case was convincing. The proof they gave suggested Fuller had planned the attack carefully. He knew the Jugga family's place well and timed his entry when only Kaylee and her mom were there. The jury also saw how Fuller's controlling behavior affected Kaylee emotionally and mentally, with threatening messages and trying to keep her away from her loved ones. Martise Fuller was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and attempted first-degree intentional homicide.
We find the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
The verdict was met with a sense of relief and justice by the Jugga family and the community, although it could never undo the pain of losing Kaylee. Fuller was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, reflecting the gravity of his actions and the premeditated nature of the crime. During his sentencing, Fuller showed some emotion for what seemed to be the first time in the courtroom. Nevertheless, he maintained his claim of innocence and conveyed his apologies to the family through a statement read by his attorney.
From Springville has been found guilty of killing his girlfriend's little son.
Dylan Shoemaker was 19 years old when he was sentenced in January 2014 for killing Austin Smith, his girlfriend's 2-year-old son. Shoemaker was taking care of Austin at their home in Springville, where they lived with Shoemaker's parents. Shoemaker admitted that he lost his temper with the child, who was just 4 days away from his second birthday when he died.
He beat Austin Smith to death because the boy wouldn't stop crying. That child was just 23 months old.
The case got a lot of attention from the media because the crime was shocking, and both the person who did it and the victim were young. During the trial, Shoemaker spoke in his defense and explained what happened before Austin died. He said he got really frustrated with Austin's behavior and ended up hitting and spanking him. Things got worse when Shoemaker threw Austin on the floor and punched him in the head multiple times through a pillow. This showed how bad the abuse was. The prosecution had strong evidence against Shoemaker. They showed that what he did wasn't just a mistake, but a deliberate act of violence. They had medical reports that described how badly Austin was hurt, which matched up with severe hits. Witnesses, including doctors, talked about how Austin got hurt and why, supporting the prosecution's argument that Shoemaker meant to hurt him badly. As a result of the trial, Shoemaker was convicted of second-degree murder and initially sentenced to the maximum penalty of 25 years to life in prison. This sentence reflected the gravity of the crime and the community's desire for justice for the young victim. However, Shoemaker's legal team filed for an appeal, arguing that the original sentence was excessively harsh for someone of his age and with no prior criminal record. After consideration, the appellate court reduced his sentence to 18 years, a decision that sparked further debate about the appropriateness of sentencing in cases involving young offenders. The courtroom atmosphere during Shoemaker's sentencing was charged with emotion. As he entered the room, Shoemaker began to cry, visibly shaken by the proceedings and the realization of the consequences of his actions.
Shoemaker entered the courtroom for his sentencing. He couldn't even get settled behind the defense table before breaking into tears. That's right, Shoemaker expressed how sorry he was for his actions.
In court today to receive a sentence for using a dating app to set up a robbery that ended with another teen being shot.
In the spring of 2017, a startling and tragic incident unfolded involving Cook and her boyfriend. The story, which began innocuously enough on a dating app, quickly spiraled into a violent encounter that left one man injured and Cook facing serious legal consequences. According to reports, Cook and her boyfriend concocted a plan to steal a car from a man and his friend they had met through the dating app. What started as a deceptive ploy swiftly escalated into a harrowing ordeal when Cook's boyfriend resorted to gunfire, injuring one of the men. Miraculously, the victim survived the gunshot wound, but the events of that night would forever alter the lives of all involved. When the case was brought before the court, Cook, then just a teenager, opted not to contest to the charges leveled against her. Her decision not to plead innocence was not an admission of guilt either, leaving many observers puzzled by her stance.
Could have been wrong that her son had to get shot because I didn't even know he was get shot. My boyfriend and his friends get trained me to do this. I didn't even know what was going on until I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I just want to say I asked for forgiveness when she said get a chance.
Despite her youth and lack of a clear criminal history, Cook received an astonishingly severe sentence, 20 years behind bars. This punishment, coupled with Cook's visibly distraught demeanor during the court proceedings, sparked widespread debate and raised the questions about the fairness of the judicial system, particularly regarding juvenile offenders.
Concurrent as to the first 2 counts.
The crying you hear is coming from Cook's mother. The sentence much more severe than they expected.
Charges. All fines and costs.
The emotional turmoil experienced by Cook was palpable, captured on video as she tearfully pleaded to her mother for support. The footage of her distress quickly circulated across social media platforms, igniting public outrage and calls for re-evaluation of Cook's sentence. Critics of the judicial system pointed to Cook's youth and the circumstances surrounding the crime as mitigating factors that warranted a more lenient punishment. They argued that while Cook's actions were undoubtedly wrong, the severity of her sentence seemed disproportionate to her level of involvement and her potential for rehabilitation. You've made it this far, and we appreciate it. To show our gratitude, here's an additional bonus story of Philip Chisholm's actions at his court trial.
8th grader, who's in court for murdering his 24-year-old school math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, on October 22, 2013.
Philip Chisholm's crime in 2013 sent shockwaves through the town of Danvers, Massachusetts. At just 14 years old, he was accused of the brutal rape and murder of his math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, 24. The details of the crime are disturbing. Chisholm attacked Ritzer in a school bathroom after school hours. He used a box cutter to slit her throat and then moved her body in a recycling bin to the woods behind the school, and stole her credit cards and underwear. Chisholm also sexually assaulted Ritzer both in the bathroom and in the woods. The crime was premeditated, as evidenced by Chisholm bringing a change of clothes and a mask to school that day.
Followed her into a restroom where he took her life. His brutality didn't stop there. He robbed, assaulted, and abused her. Afterward, he disposed of her lifeless body by placing it in a garbage bin and dragging it behind the school. In a futile attempt to cover up his crimes, Chisholm went into town and used Ritzard's credit card to buy a movie ticket. However, he was traced down and arrested by the police the next morning.
Ritzer's body was discovered in the early hours of October 23, 2013. Surveillance footage from the school helped police identify Chisholm as the suspect. Chisholm was found walking along a road in a nearby town early on October 23, 2013, carrying a blood-stained box cutter and Ritzer's credit cards. The motive for the crime remains unclear. The defense argued that Chisholm was suffering from severe mental illness and was not criminally responsible for his actions due to his young age and mental state. However, the prosecution painted a different picture, highlighting Chisholm's calculated actions after the murder, such as using Ritzer's credit cards at a nearby store. The case gained national attention due to Chisholm's young age. A major point of contention was whether he should be tried as an adult. Massachusetts law prohibits life sentences without parole for juveniles, but the severity of the crime sparked debate. Ultimately, Chisholm was tried as an adult. His trial began in November 2015. The prosecution presented evidence of premeditation, including the fact that Chisholm had changed clothes before and after the crime and had searched for information on how to dispose of a body. On February 26, 2016, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years for the murder conviction. He also received concurrent sentences of 40 years to life for aggravated rape and 40 years to life for armed robbery, to be served concurrently with his life sentence. This means he won't be eligible for parole for at least 40 years.
For the period of not less than 40 years.
Philip Chisholm will serve 40 years in prison before he gets a chance for parole. His mother broke down in tears on hearing it.
His behavior and actions showed a total lack of respect for the seriousness of his offenses and the immense suffering he caused to Colleen Ritzer's family.
Chisholm watched without expression as tearful friends described the loss. The fellow teacher seen in surveillance during the trial with Colleen in her last moments alive.
The Colleen Ritzer case is a chilling reminder of the potential for violence, even among young people. It also sparked conversations about juvenile justice and the impact of mental health on criminal behavior. These 7 cases of children and teenagers who lost control during their trials show how complicated juvenile crime and psychology can be. Each young person committed terrible acts and deeply affected their communities and the victims' families. Their actions in court made their crimes even more shocking and showed their troubled minds. These cases make us think differently about childhood innocence and highlight the need for careful approaches to juvenile justice. It is important to find a balance between punishing young offenders and helping them with their mental health issues. If you found this video interesting, share it with your friends and family. Let's raise awareness about mental health and the importance of early intervention to prevent such tragedies. For more detailed stories and analysis on criminal cases, subscribe to our channel and stay informed.